I can't believe they thought camouflage face paint would fool an infrared sensor, Sergeant Harlan muttered, wiping a streak of mud off his cheek. The humid air of the rainforest hung thick around the squad, each man moving with the practiced precision of seasoned soldiers. The lush canopy above barely let any light through, casting the jungle floor in perpetual twilight. It was the perfect terrain for the kind of guerrilla warfare the Human Special Operations Unit excelled at. Harlan glanced over his team, each member camouflaged to blend seamlessly into the dense foliage. They were deep behind enemy lines, having penetrated the alien defenses under the cover of night. Their mission was simple: locate and destroy the alien communication hub, crippling their ability to coordinate ground forces. "Movement up ahead," whispered Corporal Jenkins, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the jungle. Harlan followed Jenkins' gaze and saw the faint shimmer of alien armor through the underbrush. The aliens, known as the Zorth, were a reptilian species towering over humans and clad in bioluminescent armor that made them stand out in the rainforest. Harlan signaled for his men to halt. They crouched low, their dark uniforms blending into the shadows. The Zorth soldiers moved in a slow, deliberate patrol, their weapons at the ready. They were cautious, but not cautious enough. The humans had trained for this, adapting to the environment in ways the Zorth couldn't comprehend. Harlan held up 3 fingers, then pointed at the patrol. The squad moved silently into position. On his signal, they struck. Silencers hissed and the aliens dropped without a sound, their bodies hitting the ground with a muted thud. "Clear," whispered Harlan. The men moved forward, dragging the alien corpses into the underbrush to hide the evidence of their presence. The squad pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine pathways of the jungle with the aid of their digital maps. The Zorth communication hub was situated in a natural clearing ahead, a cluster of alien technology incongruously nestled among the ancient trees. As they approached, the team could see the glow of the hub's equipment. The aliens had underestimated the humans' capacity for stealth and infiltration. Harlan smirked at their mistake. He held up a fist, signaling the squad to halt. They were on the edge of the clearing now, the hub within sight. A handful of Zorth engineers were working on the equipment, oblivious to the danger lurking in the jungle. Harlan signaled for Corporal Davis to set up the charges. Davis moved with the grace of a shadow, placing the explosives around the hub's perimeter. The rest of the squad provided cover, eyes scanning the clearing for any sign of reinforcements. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the high-pitched whine of an alien sensor. The Zorth engineers froze, then scrambled for their weapons. Harlan's team opened fire, suppressing the aliens with a barrage of bullets. "Davis, now," Harlan shouted. Davis detonated the charges. The clearing erupted in a ball of fire, the alien equipment reduced to twisted metal and flames. The shockwave knocked several Zorth off their feet, and the jungle was filled with the acrid smell of burning technology. "Move out," Harlan ordered. The squad retreated into the jungle, leaving the burning wreckage behind. The mission was a success, but the Zorth would be on high alert now. They navigated the dense foliage, their path taking them deeper into enemy territory. The jungle grew thicker, the air more oppressive. The sounds of alien pursuit were not far behind. "Sergeant, what now?" asked Private Miller, his voice tinged with anxiety. "Stay focused. We stick to the plan and regroup at the extraction point," Harlan replied, his tone leaving no room for doubt. As they moved, the sounds of the jungle enveloped them once more. The rustling leaves, distant calls of unknown creatures, and the incessant buzz of insects created an eerie soundtrack to their retreat. The squad maintained their formation, each man covering the other's back. An hour passed before they heard the distant roar of alien engines. The Zorth had deployed patrols to hunt them down. Harlan led his men into a dense thicket, hoping to use the natural cover to evade detection. "Hold position," Harlan whispered as they crouched low. The ground trembled as the alien patrol passed nearby, their guttural language echoing through the trees. The squad held their breath, motionless, as the patrol moved on. When the danger had passed, Harlan gave the signal to move. They continued their trek, the tension mounting with every step. The extraction point was still several kilometers away, and the jungle offered no reprieve. Hours later, they stumbled upon a Zorth encampment. Harlan cursed under his breath. The aliens had set up a forward operating base, blocking their path to the extraction point. The camp was heavily guarded, with sentries posted at every entrance and patrols crisscrossing the area. "Options, Sergeant?" Jenkins asked, his voice low. Harlan scanned the camp. They couldn't afford to detour. They were low on supplies and the extraction window was closing. They had to go through the camp undetected if possible. Silent takedowns, Harlan decided. We move through the camp, eliminate any threats quietly, no alarms. The squad nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They moved into position, each man targeting a sentry. The takedowns were quick and efficient, the Zorth falling before they could raise an alarm. Harlan led his team through the camp, avoiding patrols and sticking to the shadows. They were almost clear when a Zorth soldier stumbled upon Davis, raising his weapon to fire. The shot rang out, shattering the silence. Harlan's blood ran cold as the camp erupted into chaos. The squad opened fire, dropping aliens left and right as they fought their way through the camp. Go, go, go! Harlan shouted, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. They broke through the camp's perimeter, sprinting into the jungle. The Zorth were hot on their heels, but the humans had one advantage. They knew how to survive in this unforgiving environment. Harlan's heart pounded as they dashed through the dense jungle, the Zorth in hot pursuit. The alien soldiers were relentless, but the humans were adept at using the environment to their advantage. They weaved through the thick underbrush, ducked under low-hanging vines, and leaped over fallen logs, moving like shadows in the twilight gloom. Keep moving, Harlan urged, his voice steady despite the chaos. The squad navigated the rugged terrain with practiced ease, their familiarity with the jungle allowing them to outpace their alien pursuers. They could hear the Zorth crashing through the undergrowth behind them, the aliens' lack of finesse working in the humans' favor. Suddenly, Harlan held up a hand, signaling a halt. The squad dropped to their knees, blending into the foliage. Harlan listened intently, hearing the Zorth draw closer. He knew they needed to create a distraction to buy themselves some time. Claymores, he whispered to Davis, who nodded and began setting up the explosive devices. The rest of the squad took positions, their weapons trained on the direction of the approaching aliens. Moments later, the Zorth soldiers burst into view, their bioluminescent armor glowing eerily in the dim light. Harlan waited until they were within the kill zone before giving the signal. Now, the claymores detonated, sending a deadly spray of shrapnel into the alien ranks. The Zorth soldiers fell, their bodies torn apart by the explosion. Those who survived the initial blast were quickly picked off by the squad's precise gunfire. Move out, Harlan ordered as the last of the aliens fell. They couldn't afford to linger. The noise would attract more patrols. They pressed on, moving swiftly through the jungle. The adrenaline pumping through their veins kept them alert. Every shadow and sound scrutinized for potential threats. The Zorth were not far behind, their determination undiminished despite the losses they had suffered. As night fell, the jungle became even more treacherous. The darkness was nearly absolute, the thick canopy blocking out any moonlight. The squad relied on their night vision gear, the green glow of their goggles casting the jungle in an eerie light. "Sergeant, we've got movement," Jenkins whispered, pointing to a flicker of light in the distance. Harlan peered through his goggles and saw a small group of Zorth soldiers setting up a temporary camp. "Looks like they're trying to regroup," Harlan said. "Let's give them a reason to reconsider." He divided the squad into two teams. Team Alpha, led by Harlan, would flank the Zorth from the left while Team Bravo, led by Jenkins, would approach from the right. The plan was to hit the aliens hard and fast, leaving them no time to react. They moved into position with the silent efficiency of seasoned operatives. Harlan watched as the Zorth soldiers went about their tasks, unaware of the danger closing in on them. He waited for the perfect moment, then gave the signal. The attack was swift and brutal. Team Alpha and Team Bravo struck simultaneously, their suppressed weapons barely making a sound. The Zorth soldiers fell before they could even raise their weapons. Within minutes, the camp was silent, the alien bodies lying still among the trees. "All clear," Jenkins reported, his voice calm. "Good work," Harlan replied. "Let's keep moving. The extraction point isn't far now." They resumed their journey, the sounds of the jungle their constant companion. The tension was palpable, every step bringing them closer to safety. The squad remained vigilant, knowing that the Zorth would not give up easily. An hour later, they reached the edge of a steep ravine. The extraction point was on the other side, but the only way across was a narrow rope bridge, swaying precariously in the wind. Harlan cursed under his breath. Crossing the bridge would leave them exposed, and the Zorth were sure to be close behind. "Sergeant, what do we do?" Private Miller asked, his voice tinged with anxiety. "We cross," Harlan said firmly. "One at a time, quickly and quietly." He went first, gripping the ropes tightly as he made his way across. The bridge creaked under his weight, but it held. Once he reached the other side, he signaled for the next man to follow. One by one, the squad crossed the ravine, each man making it safely to the other side. Just as the last man reached solid ground, the jungle erupted with the sounds of the pursuing Zorth. Harlan turned to see the aliens emerging from the trees, their eyes glowing with a predatory light. "Set up defensive positions," Harlan ordered. The squad fanned out, taking cover behind rocks and trees. They knew they had to hold the line until the extraction team arrived. The first wave of Zorth charged across the bridge, their weapons blazing. The squad opened fire, cutting the aliens down before they could reach the other side. The rope swayed violently, the bodies of fallen Zorth plunging into the ravine below. But more were coming. The Zorth were relentless, driven by a desire for vengeance. Harlan knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Sergeant, we're running low on ammo," Davis called out, firing off another burst. "Just a little longer," Harlan replied, his voice steady. "The extraction team will be here soon." The firefight intensified, the air filled with the sounds of gunfire and alien roars. The squad fought with everything they had, each man determined to hold the line. They were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of terrain and training. Finally, the sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. Harlan looked up to see the extraction team descending from above, their guns blazing as they provided cover fire. "Go, go, go," Harlan shouted. The squad moved as one, sprinting for the waiting helicopter. They scrambled aboard, the door gunners laying down suppressive fire to keep the Zorth at bay. As the helicopter lifted off, Harlan looked down at the jungle below. The Zorth were still coming, their pursuit undeterred by the humans' escape. But for now, they were safe. The mission was a success. "Good work, everyone," Harlan said, his voice filled with pride. "We'll be back for more." As the helicopter sped away from the ravine, the squad breathed a collective sigh of relief. The immediate threat was behind them, but Harlan knew their mission wasn't over. The extraction team delivered them to a temporary base deep within the jungle, a fortified position designed to support continued operations against the Zorth. "Harlan, command wants a debrief," the pilot said as they landed. "Understood," Harlan replied, signaling his men to disembark. "Jenkins, Davis, Miller, you're with me." The four men made their way to the command tent, where Colonel Grant was waiting. Grant was a grizzled veteran, his face lined with years of combat experience. He stood over a holographic map of the region, studying it intently. Sergeant Grant greeted without looking up. "I hear your mission was a success." "Yes, Sir," Harlan confirmed. "The comms hub is destroyed, but the Zorth are relentless. They'll be reinforcing their position soon." Grant nodded, finally meeting Harlan's gaze. "We've intercepted communications indicating that the Zorth are planning a counteroffensive. They're gathering their forces at a large encampment not far from here. If we don't strike first, we'll be overwhelmed." Harlan understood the implication. "What's the plan, sir?" "We launch a preemptive strike," Grant said. "Hit them hard before they have a chance to mobilize." "Your team will lead the assault." Harlan nodded. "We'll be ready." The briefing concluded. Harlan and his team prepared for the mission. They rearmed, checked their gear, and went over the plan repeatedly. This operation would be even more dangerous than the last, but failure was not an option. As dawn broke, the jungle was shrouded in mist. The squad moved out, their objective clear. They trekked through the dense foliage, every step taking them closer to the heart of the Zorth encampment. Hours later, they reached a ridge overlooking the enemy camp. The Zorth had set up a fortified position, with sentries posted at regular intervals and patrols circling the perimeter. Harlan observed the scene through his binoculars, noting the positions of the guards and the layout of the defenses. "Standard patrol patterns," Jenkins remarked. "They're disciplined, I'll give them that." "Discipline won't save them," Harlan replied. "We hit them fast and hard, no room for error." The squad split into two teams again. Harlan and Davis would infiltrate the camp from the west while Jenkins and Miller would approach from the east. Their goal was to create as much chaos as possible, disrupting the Zorth's preparations for their counteroffensive. Harlan's team moved into position, using the vegetation for cover. They reached the edge of the camp without being detected. Harlan signaled Davis to set the charges, targeting key structures and vehicles. The rest of the squad did the same on their side, planting explosives to maximize the damage. "Charges set," Davis whispered, giving a thumbs up. "On my mark," Harlan replied, watching the patrols. He waited until the guards were at their farthest point, then gave the signal. Now. The explosions ripped through the camp, a series of deafening blasts that sent the Zorth into a frenzy. Harland and Davis opened fire, picking off disoriented soldiers. Across the camp, Jenkins and Miller did the same, their bullets finding targets amid the chaos. The Zorth scrambled to respond, but the humans were relentless. They moved through the camp like ghosts, their silenced weapons taking a deadly toll. The aliens' bioluminescent armor made them easy targets in the dim light, each flash of green marking another kill. As the battle raged, Harland spotted the Zorth commander barking orders, trying to rally his troops. Harland knew that taking him out would further demoralize the enemy. He signaled to Davis, and they flanked the commander's position, moving with lethal precision. The Zorth commander never saw them coming. Harland fired, and the alien leader dropped, his body crumpling to the ground. The remaining Zorth soldiers faltered, their cohesion shattered. The humans pressed the advantage, driving the aliens back with relentless fire. Within minutes, the camp was a smoking ruin. The few surviving Zorth fled into the jungle, their will to fight broken. Harland and his team regrouped, their mission a resounding success. Regroup at the extraction point. Harland ordered, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The squad moved quickly, leaving the devastated camp behind. They reached the extraction point without incident, and the helicopter arrived to take them back to base. As they lifted off, Harland looked down at the smoldering remains of the Zorth camp. They had struck a significant blow against the enemy, but he knew the war was far from over. Back at base, Colonel Grant was waiting. "Excellent work, Sergeant," he said, his voice filled with approval. "The Zorth are in disarray. This gives us a critical advantage." "Thank you, Sir," Harland replied. "What's our next move?" "We keep up the pressure," Grant said. "Your team will have a few hours to rest and rearm, then we hit them again." Harland nodded. "Understood, sir. We'll be ready." As he walked away, Harland felt a surge of pride. They had faced a formidable enemy and emerged victorious. The jungle was a brutal battleground, but the human spirit was indomitable. They would continue to fight, no matter the odds, until the Zorth were defeated.